Here we go again. Don't deal with the problem and don't hold Labour accountable for the asylum hotels, but let's hold Nigel Farage accountable for what Nigel Farage says, and let's label that as divisive rhetoric. But anyway, guys, former leader of the Green Party, Caroline Lucas, is going to sit down with Trevor Phillips on Sky News, and she's going to be saying that a lot of these migrant hotel protests are as a result of Nigel Farage's divisive rhetoric, and what he's saying is stoking up, these protests, and I've said many, many times, don't worry about that. Let's look at the root cause, why there's so many asylum hotels. But they refuse to acknowledge their failed policies, especially in relation to immigration, and they'd rather just deflect and look for someone else. Okay, we need to look for a scapegoat. Nigel Farage is the guy. Perfect. Reform UK, their divisive rhetoric is what's turning this country upside down, when in fact it's, your poor policy on immigration. Very simple. I know it's not her party, it's the Labour Party, but she's always going to side with the Labour Party. She's part of the Green Party. But anyway, guys, let's get straight into, what she says.
Maurice has got a point there, hasn't he? That the feeling that there is a lack of control here is evinced in reaction to this issue in Epping.
I mean, I think there's a hell of a lot going on here, and it is important to kind of do a bit of disaggregation. So, yes, people that were concerned about immigration, but they are also concerned about the fact that they have a really high cost of living, that inequality is being driven up. I think if we had a population who felt hopeful for the future, who felt they had housing for their kids, who felt that they could get a doctor's appointment when they wanted one, then the ability of the Nigel Farages of this world to whip up quite so much grievance against asylum seekers who have a perfect right to come and try and seek asylum here. That is not a criminal offence. That ability of Farage's to be spreading his toxicity would be considerably less. So I think it is important to look at the fact that, as Angela Rayner herself said, if you look at the places where there were the most unrest after the Southport attacks, then 17 out of 18 of those were some of the most deprived areas in the country. So that is not an accident. So I think we need to stop blaming asylum seekers, which is kind of what it sounds like. People have an absolute right to claim asylum. The idea of putting Royal Navy boats in the Channel, I think, is bonkers, not least because if you just made it possible for people to make their applications for asylum without having to be here in the UK, then people wouldn't have to put their lives at risk. They wouldn't have to be driving then this criminal boat system.
But I think that the issue that people are raising is, first of all, you say they've got an absolute right. Question, should that continue to be the case? And secondly, I guess if you ask anybody in Epping High Street, they would say, we're sympathetic to people, but we have a lot of homeless ourselves. And why are we spending £6 million a day putting asylum seekers in hotels when my nephew, my son, my daughter cannot get a home?
That is exactly my point. So if we addressed some of those very legitimate concerns that people have...
You're going to address it by putting his or her son and nephew in the hotel?
No, I'm going to address it.
Why have they got to be out on the street and the asylum seekers get the room?
I'm not very much of a fan of them being in hotels, and I think they should be allowed to work while they're waiting for their asylum process to feed through. So they could be making a contribution to the economy. They would love to do that. It would be good for our economy if they did do that. But my point is that the ability to whip this up into being such a kind of toxic issue would be far less if the very people that you were talking about did have somewhere for their kids to live. And that should be about making sure that in the sixth richest economy in the world, we levy a range of wealth taxes so we can actually deal with those problems instead of pitting vulnerable people against each other.
All right, before I mark Reynolds' report card, what do you make of what Caroline's been saying?
I just don't see why it's a human right to leave France. And what's the problem with France? Why are we obliged to do this? This is completely...
Because people have a right to choose where they seek asylum. If their family is here, and we've made it incredibly difficult for family reunion to happen, because we've colonised quite a lot of the world, then they are speaking English. There are lots of good reasons why people might want to come to the UK, and it is entirely within their rights to seek asylum. They can be sent back if their application
As far
doesn't.
as I understand
doesn't
it, it's a criminal act to enter into the country illegally. I mean, I don't get this.
We haven't made it possible for people to enter legally. So what other options do they have?
There is an established process of immigration, but this idea that it is a right...
Before you two get too far down the rabbit hole, let me come to you, Reynolds, because, of course, this is all your party's fault. We wouldn't be in this situation if in the 14 years that you were in charge, you'd have sorted it out.
Well, not true, of course, is what I'd say. Can I just... I've listened
Well,
very...
when you say not true,
well,
you
I'm
had
going to
14 years
I'm going to answer.
to sort it.
Answer.
Before you get on to him, why don't you sort out... Well, tell me why you didn't sort it out in 14 years.
Part of it is the answer to what Morris has said. So, look, when we came in back in 2010, there were people trying to cross through Eurotunnel. That was stopped. What's happened since is that people have found a new illegal route, which is the boats. Now, I agree, there is much more that needs to be done to stop the boats. We did have a plan. I know some might disagree with it. That's fine. I've listened respectfully to their position. I hope they listened to mine. And we had the plan, the Rwanda plan, to say that anyone who does come here illegally should then be able to claim asylum, fine, but they will be processed offshore. That's what Australia did. That would be a deterrent. I think it's important also
You never got anybody on a plane to Rwanda, except various Home Secretaries.
OK, let me park that for a second. I think it's also important to separate legal and illegal migration. So, Morris talked about take back control. Whether we like it or not, we did take back control of our borders in terms of legal migration. The question is how high the barrier should be to allow legal migration. And actually, in the aftermath of COVID and Brexit, where a lot of people had left our country, there was, yes, a big increase that year, but that was part of bringing people back who had left the country in the first place. I'd also think it's important to say that actually the idea that is often used on social media blurs these two, and I think that's very unhelpful because the people who come here legally feel as strongly about illegal migration as everyone else. They've played by the rules, they've filled out the forms, they've paid their fees.
I've let you respond to it, Randall. I'm still not hearing why you didn't do anything about the illegal migration.
I said what we did do. We tackled Eurotunnel, we sorted that problem, and people
There's still
moved on.
people coming in under lorries. There's photographs in the newspapers last week.
The boats, we started taking action there. Unfortunately, the Rwanda scheme was cancelled by Labour. If they thought it was such a bad scheme, they should have allowed it to continue because the process was already there and proven it. What they did was scrapped it and waste a year. They've wasted a year, and it's interesting they're now looking at schemes that are not dissimilar, just a different country to process people in. Well, it's very interesting they're coming round to our way of thinking.
It wasn't just processing, though, was it? The Rwanda scheme wasn't just processing. They were going to have to stay there, which is not the same.
But it's providing people a safe country. And actually, this is the point that Morris made. France is a safe country. Italy is a safe country. Greece is a safe country. The very few people land here as their first safe country.
OK.
Because of the geography, you great lummock. How can they?
Morris,
I've been called worse.
Guys, I think we can both agree that the Conservative Tories were super ineffective as it relates to illegal immigration. Illegal immigration was spiking through the Conservative Tory rule. And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to cut Labour some slack, hence why a lot of the problems that Labour have inherited have come from the Tories. But Labour have had a year and they haven't done any better. So you have to hold both of them accountable. Guys, honestly speaking, I'm just trying to find out what political party can tackle this problem, because this is clearly a problem that's on the majority of Brits' minds. And the next election will be decided on who can be the most aggressive in relation to illegal immigration. That is what's going to take the next election. The next election will be won by who can promise to stop, illegal immigration, because it's just going insane. And I don't even know what's going on with the political parties in the United Kingdom. Jeremy Corbyn opens his on, Labour lose 300,000, and now there's Ben Habib's party, there's Reform, there's the Conservatives, there's just so much going on, honestly. I don't even know where UK politics is even heading myself, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But anyway, guys, let me know in the comment section what you think down below. Like, comment and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.